The Monday morning rush inside Hartsfield, Jackson Atlanta International Airport always felt like organized chaos, but today the atmosphere carried a strange electricity, something almost imperceptible, like a current humming beneath the surface. Sunlight poured through the massive glass windows of Terminal C, casting long beams across the polished floors, catching the wheels of rolling suitcases and the hurried steps of travelers scrambling to make their flights. Officer Mason Hale adjusted the strap on his vest and kept his pace steady as his K-9 partner, Rex, walked beside him in perfect stride. Rex, a highly trained Belgian Malinois with alert amber eyes, looked like he was sculpted from pure tension and discipline. He had been through narcotics, explosives, and missing person searches, yet he remained a creature of instinct, always aware, always listening. Mason trusted that instinct more than anything. But today, there was something off. Rex's ears twitched the moment they passed through the terminal doors. He paused mid-step, his nose lifting toward the air as if catching a scent no one else could sense. Mason noticed immediately. Rex rarely broke formation unless it mattered. "You good, buddy?" Mason murmured. Rex didn't respond with his usual reassuring glance. Instead, he tugged forward, slow at first, then with growing urgency. Mason tightened his grip on the leash, feeling the sudden strength in the dog's muscles. Passengers stepped aside, some smiling, some filming out of pure social media habit. Kids pointed at the K-9, parents whispered reminders to stay close, and gate agents shouted new boarding calls over the intercom. But Rex wasn't paying attention to any of that. His nose jerked left, toward the long security line. Mason followed his gaze. Nothing unusual. A mix of travelers, business professionals tapping on phones, families juggling backpacks, tourists comparing boarding passes. Then Rex growled. Not loud, not aggressive, low, intentional. "A warning." "Rex," Mason whispered sharply. But the dog broke forward with a force that nearly ripped the leash from Mason's hand. Passengers jumped aside as Rex darted between them, weaving through legs, sliding across the floor, heading straight toward a woman pushing a bright teal baby stroller. The woman couldn't have been more than 27 or 28. She had dark hair pulled into a messy bun, a faded denim jacket, and a face pale enough to be noticed even in the chaotic crowd. She looked exhausted, emotionally drained, like someone who hadn't slept in days. She didn't even see the dog coming. "Ma'am, step back," Mason shouted, running full speed. Rex lunged. The woman gasped and tried to yank the stroller away, but Rex was too fast. With a single explosive leap, he landed inside the stroller, knocking the canopy backward and tilting the structure onto its rear wheels. Passengers screamed. A few ducked behind their luggage. A man pulled his daughter close. The woman froze, her eyes wide with terror, not at Rex but at the stroller itself. Mason skidded to a stop beside them. "Rex, out," he commanded. But Rex didn't budge. He stood inside the stroller, muscles stiff, nose pressed deep into the blanket-covered seat, tail rigid like a spear. Then something small rolled out from under the blanket, bumping against the stroller frame, bouncing onto the floor, and spinning across the tiles. A collective gasp echoed through the terminal. The woman clapped a hand over her mouth, tears instantly filling her eyes. "No, no, no, please," she whispered, sinking toward the floor as if her body had suddenly lost all strength. Mason's heart pounded as he crouched, reaching the object before any passenger could touch it. It wasn't a toy. It wasn't a bottle. It wasn't anything a parent would ever put in a stroller. It was a cold, metallic cylinder. Familiar, recognizable, and absolutely not supposed to be in an airport terminal. Mason's blood ran cold. Rex barked sharply, the sound echoing through the suddenly silent corridor. Passengers backed away. Someone dropped a coffee cup. A TSA agent drew closer, hand hovering near his radio. "Ma'am," Mason said, voice tightening, "I need you to step away from the stroller now." The woman shook her head frantically, her knees trembling. "You don't understand. I didn't. It isn't, I swear." Her words tangled into panicked sobs. But Mason barely heard her. His eyes were locked on the cylinder. It was palm-sized, unlabeled, sealed with a reinforced cap. The weight of it felt wrong, not like a child's item or a personal belonging, but something deliberately placed. Rex barked again, claws scraping against the stroller's fabric as he kept sniffing the space where the cylinder had been hidden. The dog only reacted like this to one category of object, and it was never good. "Mason, what have you got?" called a TSA supervisor jogging toward him. Mason didn't take his eyes off the object. "Get the area cleared," he said tightly. "Now." The supervisor saw the item and immediately blanched. He spun toward the crowd. "Everyone step away from this area. Please follow security instructions and move toward gate C-17. The crowd erupted in nervous whispers. A woman clutching a toddler hurried away. A business traveler cursed under his breath. A teenager live-streamed with breathless panic. Mason moved the cylinder carefully into a secure glove bag attached to his vest, sealing it. The woman fell to the ground, shaking uncontrollably. "Please," she begged, "please don't let them near it, don't let them take it." "Ma'am," Mason said, crouching in front of her, "I need you to tell me exactly what was in that stroller." She shook her head, tears soaking her cheeks. I can't. If I do, they'll take." Her words died in her throat. Rex suddenly went still. Every hair on his body stood up. His ears snapped forward. His eyes locked onto something inside the stroller. A small device with a blinking light. Red. Slow. Steady. A baby monitor. Mason felt a jolt of dread surge through him. "Where's the baby?" he demanded. The woman broke. She covered her face with her hands and sobbed so violently her shoulders shook. I don't know. I'm supposed to pretend. I'm supposed to deliver it and walk away. They have my daughter. They'll hurt her if I don't." Her voice cracked into raw agony. Rex barked at the stroller, louder now, more insistent. His nose pressed against the blankets again, searching, tracking. Passengers stared in stunned silence. A few cried. A father whispered, "My God." Mason didn't move. His pulse thundered, his mouth went dry. The baby monitor blinked again, and a faint cry came through the speaker. A real baby's cry, echoing from somewhere else in the airport. The woman screamed. Rex snapped his head toward the far corridor, an invisible thread pulling his focus. And without waiting for permission, Rex took off running. Rex bolted through the airport corridor like a living missile, paws pounding against the polished tiles, echoing in the suddenly hushed terminal. Mason tore after him, heart thundering, the adrenaline in his veins making every step feel explosive. Travelers scattered in all directions, some dropping luggage, some filming the chaos on their phones, others frozen in disbelief. The screams and gasps of passengers faded behind Mason, replaced by the rhythmic pounding of Rex's paws and the faint wail of a baby monitor carried through the air. The monitor crackled again, soft static, then the unmistakable whimpering of a child. Mason's chest tightened. "Rex, lead the way," he shouted, voice echoing. The dog darted between pillars and kiosk displays, paws skidding around corners, tail stiff with intensity. Every few seconds he paused to sniff the air, ears twitching like radar antennas. Mason's lungs burned, sweat soaking his uniform, but he couldn't stop. The cries grew louder, closer. Whoever had orchestrated this knew exactly how to manipulate fear. Around the bend, Rex came to a sudden halt near a flight information board. Mason skidded to a stop, almost crashing into a family who had frozen mid-step. He followed Rex's gaze and froze. In the midst of the bustling terminal, a small, abandoned stroller sat against a wall, surrounded by a pool of scattered belongings. a diaper bag, a tiny hat, and a rolled-up blanket. But the stroller was empty. The baby was gone. Mason's stomach churned. His mind raced. He radioed the situation to control, keeping his voice low but urgent. Unit 7, suspect child removal in progress. Terminal C, child's location unknown. I repeat, child missing, possible abduction. Static crackled over the radio. Copy, Unit 7. All units converge on Terminal C and access points. Lockdown in progress. Mason's heart pounded. He couldn't afford to wait for backup. Every second counted. Rex barked sharply, drawing Mason's attention. The dog's stance was rigid, eyes locked on a row of automatic doors leading to the curbside arrivals area. Mason followed, heart sinking. Outside, the morning sun glared off the black asphalt of the departure lanes. Travelers scrambled for taxis and rideshare vehicles, oblivious to the unfolding emergency. But Mason's gaze was fixed on a sight that made his blood run cold. A sleek black SUV, its windows darkly tinted, waited near the curb. And then he noticed it. The driver's door opened, a hand reaching out briefly to grab a small, pale bundle. "Rex, wait!" Mason shouted, but Rex didn't hesitate. He charged forward, teeth bared, paws skimming the concrete. Mason sprinted after him, dodging pedestrians and rolling luggage. The SUV's engine roared as it pulled into traffic. Mason ran beside it, yelling at the driver, waving his arms. "Stop! Police! Stop the vehicle!" Inside the SUV, the driver didn't slow. Mason noticed a flash of pink, something small and fragile strapped into a carrier. His pulse spiked. That was the baby. And in that moment, a horrible thought struck him. The abductor could be armed. They could be desperate. They could be dangerous. Rex barked ferociously, leaping to snap at the SUV's rear bumper. Mason cursed, pulling on the leash as Rex slid on the asphalt. The driver swerved sharply, honking at a cab that had cut them off. Mason barely dodged, sprawling onto the pavement but rolling to his feet instantly. "Control, we have visual. SUV heading southbound on Airport BLVD. Possible child inside. I'm in pursuit." Mason's radio crackled in response. "Backup is en route. Keep the suspect in sight. Do not engage alone if armed." Mason's teeth ground together. He wasn't waiting. Not for backup, not for anyone. He couldn't. The child's life was at stake. He jumped into his patrol vehicle, tires screeching against the asphalt, sirens blaring. Rex, already inside the passenger seat, paced frantically, whimpering, whining, eyes locked on the SUV. The chase barreled through the airport perimeter. Mason cursed under his breath as the SUV swerved through lanes, narrowly missing a delivery truck. Rex growled, tense as steel springs coiled under his skin. Mason's radio buzzed continuously, dispatch giving updates, air traffic controllers trying to clear lanes, officers coordinating roadblocks, but nothing could replace the immediacy of the chase. Suddenly, the SUV braked hard and swerved into a hidden service road behind the terminal. Mason slammed the brakes, skidding to a halt inches from a sign that read, "Airport maintenance, authorized personnel only." He didn't hesitate. Rex leapt from the seat, claws digging into the asphalt. Mason followed, heart hammering. The service road was a maze of warehouses, chain-link fences, and parked utility trucks. Mason's adrenaline sharpened every sense. He could hear Rex's nails on concrete, the soft whimper of the baby monitor through the radio static, even the faint hum of the SUV engine in the distance. Then, without warning, the SUV accelerated again, taking a sharp turn behind a row of storage buildings. Mason raced after it on foot, heart threatening to burst from his chest. Rex was ahead of him now, weaving expertly, following scent, instinct, and raw determination. Mason rounded a corner and his stomach dropped. The SUV had stopped, doors open, engine still running, but there was no one inside. Panic surged. Where was the child? Where was the woman? His radio crackled. "Unit 7, do you copy?" Mason's voice was tense, nearly a shout. The vehicle, its empty, possible child inside. Rex froze mid-step, ears forward, nose quivering. He barked once low, warningly, then bolted toward a narrow alley between two warehouses. Mason followed, mind spinning. At the alley's end, Mason saw a figure, a woman, her dark hair a mess, crouched on the ground. Beside her was a small stroller, empty, blankets scattered around it. She sobbed uncontrollably. Mason skidded to a stop. "Where's the baby?" he demanded. She shook her head violently. I don't know, they took her." Her words were fragmented, broken by fear. She looked at Mason with pleading eyes, a silent apology. Rex whined, pressing against Mason's legs protectively. Mason's chest tightened, bile rising. Every second counted, every heartbeat a reminder that time was slipping away. The baby's faint cries still echoed from the monitor. But where? Where was she? From behind the warehouses came a low engine growl, the SUV's unmistakable sound. Mason cursed. Whoever had orchestrated this was methodical. They knew exactly how to manipulate panic, fear, and urgency. Mason grabbed the woman's arm, shaking her gently. "Tell me everything," he demanded, "right now." The woman's lips trembled. They told me if I didn't deliver the bottles, my daughter, they would hurt her." Her sobs shook her body. Mason's stomach twisted. He glanced at Rex, whose eyes burned with intensity. The dog pressed forward, urging Mason to follow. A shadow moved across the far end of the alley, quick, deliberate. Mason's pulse surged. He motioned to the woman to stay down, drawing his weapon instinctively. Rex growled low, teeth bared. The figure vanished behind a maintenance shed. Mason cursed under his breath. Rex barked again, insistent, relentless. Mason's heart pounded as he ran toward the shed, each step pushing him closer to the unknown. A baby's faint cries echoed again, this time more urgent. Mason's hands shook, not from fear, but from the intensity of knowing that one wrong move could cost a life. The alley narrowed, the shadows deepened, and Mason knew in that instant the worst was yet to come. Somewhere hidden behind the walls and doors of the airport service area, a child's life hung in the balance, and Rex knew exactly where to find her. Mason skidded around the corner of the maintenance shed, his boots scraping against the gravel. Rex was ahead, ears pricked, tail stiff, moving with the precision of a trained predator hunting prey. The faint wails of a baby echoed again through the alleyway, fragmented, coming in waves that made Mason's stomach knot with urgency. Each step forward felt like a gamble. One misstep could end in disaster. The shadows between the warehouses shifted. Mason could see the faint outline of the black SUV parked farther down the service road, its doors flung open. But there was no one inside, and the baby was nowhere in sight. His pulse hammered as he crouched low, hand on his weapon. Rex stopped abruptly, pawing at a corner of a storage unit door. Mason's eyes narrowed. "What is it, Rex?" the dog whined, pressing his nose to the door and growling softly. Mason's fingers itched to kick the door open, but he hesitated. There was something almost unnatural about the silence surrounding them, a pause in the chaos of the day, as if the air itself was holding its breath. He radioed control, voice sharp. "Unit 7, possible child location. Storage unit marked at service alley. I repeat, possible child inside. Request immediate backup." Static buzzed for a moment before dispatch responded. "Unit 7, copy. Backup en route. Do not enter alone. Repeat, do not enter alone if suspect still inside." Mason swallowed. He didn't have the luxury to wait. Every second counted. He glanced at Rex. The dog's eyes were fixed, imploring, urging him forward. With a deep breath, Mason crouched low and kicked the door open. The hinges groaned. A rush of stale, cool air hit his face. Mason raised his flashlight, sweeping the beam across the dim interior of the storage unit. Dust motes floated in the sunbeams, slanting through the slats in the corrugated metal walls. Boxes, crates, and metal shelving units created a labyrinth of shadows. A soft cry echoed from the far corner. Mason froze, letting his eyes adjust. There, barely visible in the dim light, was a small stroller, and in it, a tiny baby girl, bundled in a soft pink blanket, trembling. Her little hands clutched the blanket to her chest as if it were a lifeline. Mason's heart twisted. Relief surged through him, but it was short-lived. Beside the stroller, propped against a crate, was a small phone, its screen glowing faintly in the dimness. A red countdown timer blinked. Mason's stomach dropped. He ran to the stroller, lifting the baby into his arms. The child whimpered, curling against his chest instinctively. Mason's uniform was instantly soaked with her tiny tears and trembling body. It's okay," he murmured, rocking her gently, even as his mind raced. Rex circled them, growling low, teeth bared, eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of threat. Mason's gun remained raised, flashlight in his other hand, heart hammering. The phone on the crate blinked again. Mason glanced at it and froze. The countdown timer had dropped to 5 seconds. 4, 3, a video popped up on the screen. A man's face appeared masked, voice distorted electronically. Mason's stomach turned. "You saved her today," the man said, voice cold and unnerving. But this was only a warning. The screen went black. The red numbers on the timer stopped blinking. Mason's hands tightened around the baby, whose tiny body trembled against him. "Rex," Mason whispered, voice low but urgent. The dog pressed against his leg, whimpering, alert. Mason realized they weren't just dealing with a single abduction. They were dealing with someone methodical, calculating, someone who wanted to instill fear as much as cause harm. From the doorway, Mason could hear the shuffle of approaching footsteps. Backup had arrived, officers, and a K-9 unit storming into the alley. Mason's radio buzzed with frantic voices, coordinating the extraction of the baby and securing the area. The woman from the airport, the mother, arrived moments later, breathless, tears streaming down her face. She dropped to her knees beside Mason, reaching for her child. "Oh my God, my baby," she whispered, voice cracking, shaking. The baby's cries subsided as she nuzzled into her mother's arms. But Mason didn't relax. He glanced around the storage unit. The crates, the shadows, the empty SUV outside, all were potential hiding places for evidence. And that phone, that ominous message, weighed heavily on him. He had saved the child, but the threat wasn't over. Whoever orchestrated this had left a message for them, a taunt, a warning. It was clear. They had the capability to strike again, and they were watching, studying, testing responses. Rex sniffed the air, ears flicking toward a faint sound, the distant roar of an engine, almost imperceptible, then gone. Mason's pulse quickened. He tightened his grip on the baby. The mother clutched her child, whispering prayers between sobs. "I don't know how to thank you," she said, her voice trembling. Mason nodded, but his mind was elsewhere, calculating, analyzing. The day's chaos had revealed something terrifying. There were people out there who wouldn't hesitate to exploit fear, manipulate lives, and threaten innocence for their own gain. Rex barked suddenly, low and insistent, ears forward. Mason followed the dog's gaze to a shadow shifting near the far wall of the storage unit, a crate moving slightly as if someone, or something, had been hiding behind it. Mason froze. Heart pounding, he raised his flashlight and trained it on the crate. Nothing. Just the shifting shadows and dust motes in the sunlight. But the uneasy feeling remained. This wasn't over. Whoever had orchestrated this had planned meticulously. The abandoned SUV, the timed video, the hidden storage unit, it was all designed to terrorize, manipulate, and test their response. Backup officers began carefully clearing the storage unit, securing evidence, and ensuring the baby was safe. Mason held her close, stroking her hair, whispering calming words. The mother hugged the child tightly, tears soaking the blanket. But Mason's mind raced. This was just the beginning. Someone had orchestrated this entire sequence, leaving them a chilling message that promised further danger. Rex whined again, pressing against Mason's leg. Mason glanced at the dog, realizing that instinct had kept them alive, had guided him to the child before anything worse could happen. But instincts alone weren't enough. Whoever had planned this, whoever had the nerve to bring fear into an airport terminal, wouldn't stop here. Mason stood, baby safely in his arms, and surveyed the scene. The storage unit was now being secured, the mother holding her child, officers scouring the perimeter. But Mason's eyes were drawn back to the phone, blinking faintly, a reminder of the warning. Somewhere the orchestrator of this nightmare was out there, watching, waiting. And now Mason knew with chilling certainty that what they had witnessed today was only the beginning of a far larger, more dangerous game. Rex barked again, a low, determined sound. Mason understood this wasn't over, not by a long shot. And the next move would be theirs. The mother clutched her baby, tears streaking her cheeks, her body trembling as she whispered soft prayers. Mason held the child gently but didn't let his guard down. Every muscle in his body remained tense, his eyes scanning the shadows of the storage unit and the perimeter outside. Rex pressed against his leg, growling low, as if warning him that danger wasn't finished. Danger never was. Backup officers began securing the area, taking statements from the woman and passengers who had witnessed the chaos at Terminal C. The SUV, now towed to a secure lot, was swarming with bomb-sniffing dogs and forensic teams. Mason followed every movement with hawk-like precision, analyzing each detail, searching for patterns. This wasn't random. It couldn't be. The mother sobbed into the baby's shoulder. They told me to deliver the bottles or I'd never see her again, she whispered between shuddering breaths. Her eyes darted toward Mason, pleading. I didn't know what else to do, I swear. Mason nodded silently, stroking the baby's hair to soothe her, while Rex sniffed the edges of the stroller and blankets, tail stiff, alert. Mason's mind raced. Whoever orchestrated this had prepared meticulously. The airport terminal chaos, the service roads, the hidden storage unit, all of it was calculated. Then Mason's radio crackled. Unit 7, be advised. Surveillance footage shows two individuals leaving the airport perimeter moments before the storage unit was accessed. They're headed southbound, vehicle unknown. Mason's jaw tightened. He knew it wasn't over, not by a long shot. He scanned the area again, thinking strategically. Whoever was behind this had leverage, the bottles, the timer, the threat to the child, but their endgame was unclear. Were they testing responses? Were they trying to instill fear? Or was this a prelude to something far more sinister? Rex whined and tugged at Mason's sleeve, his instincts picking up something beyond human detection. Mason followed Rex's gaze. A small shadow shifted near the far corner of the warehouse complex. Mason froze. Heart pounding, he signaled to the officers. Two backup officers flanked him as they cautiously approached the corner. Mason's flashlight cut through the darkness. The shadow moved again, too deliberate, too quick for an animal. Something or someone was still in the area. Mason motioned to Rex, who barked, low and insistent. The dog lunged toward the shadow, teeth bared. The shadow disappeared behind a stack of crates, and Mason followed, adrenaline surging. Suddenly, a faint metallic clink echoed through the warehouse, a sound that made Mason freeze mid-step. He signaled the officers to halt. His eyes scanned the crates, the stacks, the shadows. Then he noticed a small piece of pink fabric snagged on the corner of a metal crate. His stomach sank. The baby's clothing or a decoy? Mason couldn't be sure. Every instinct screamed that this was another trap. He drew his firearm and edged closer to the crate. On my count, he whispered to the officers. 3, 2, 1. The crate swung open, not violently but carefully, revealing nothing. Empty. Just dust and shadows. Mason exhaled slowly, relief mingled with frustration. Whoever had been here had already fled, leaving just the faintest trace of their presence. He turned to the mother, who was still clutching the baby tightly. "Ma'am," he said softly, "we need you to stay close and calm. You're safe for now." Her sobs continued, but she nodded, glancing around nervously. The baby's soft coos provided a fragile comfort in the tense air. Mason's eyes, however, never left the shadows. Then a sudden beep pierced the air, a phone vibrating on the concrete floor. Mason froze. He bent down and picked it up carefully. The screen lit up with a message. "You found her, but the game isn't over. Follow the trail or you'll regret what comes next." Mason's pulse spiked. The text was anonymous, taunting, precise. Whoever had orchestrated this was still out there, watching, controlling the narrative. They weren't just a random criminal. They were strategic, calculated, and cruelly clever. Rex growled low, staring into the darkness, his body tense and rigid. Mason's mind raced. If they had gone to such lengths for a single child, what could come next? Was this a test, a warning, or a prelude to a larger plan? He radioed in immediately. "Control, Unit 7. New intel. Suspects may still be in the area. We have a possible digital trace, receiving threats via device. Recommend mobile tracking and tactical pursuit. Repeat, urgent." Dispatch crackled. "Copy, Unit 7. All units on high alert. Additional K-9 and tactical teams en route." Mason scanned the warehouse again. Every shadow seemed alive, every corner a potential threat. He couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping, that the orchestrator was already planning the next move. The mother shifted the baby in her arms. They said if I went to the police, they'd—" her voice faltered. Mason squeezed his eyes shut for a moment, remembering how many threats had been embedded in the ordeal. Every step of the operation had been psychological warfare, instilling fear, doubt, and urgency. Then Mason noticed movement at the edge of the warehouse complex. A figure, silhouetted against the rising sun, darting between crates toward a narrow exit. Mason signaled to the officers, "Move, on me." Rex leapt forward, a streak of amber and muscle, barking ferociously. Mason followed, sprinting after the figure. They disappeared around a corner and Mason slowed just enough to assess. The figure had vanished, leaving no trace, but Mason's instincts told him they weren't gone for long. A soft whimper came from the baby monitor. Mason glanced down. The baby stirred, sensing the tension. He whispered gently, stroking her hair, "It's okay, you're safe for now." But deep down, Mason knew it was only temporary. Whoever had orchestrated this had left a trail of breadcrumbs, and each breadcrumb was more dangerous than the last. Rex barked again, low and insistent, ears forward, signaling Mason to look toward a maintenance gate at the far end of the lot. Mason's stomach twisted. Beyond that gate lay the airport's perimeter roads, escape routes, parking lots, hidden access points. He knew that beyond those gates could be anything, suspects, traps, or worse, but he couldn't wait. He had to pursue, to anticipate, to intercept before the orchestrator struck again. As backup officers secured the mother and child and began documenting the scene, Mason felt a surge of resolve. He would follow the trail wherever it led. No hesitation, no compromise. The morning sun glinted off Rex's coat as the dog stared ahead, poised for action. Mason clenched the baby monitor in his hand, a lifeline and a reminder of what was at stake. The shadows of the warehouses seemed to pulse, alive with threat. Mason knew this. The orchestrator had planned for every contingency, and now he was in their game. And the next move, whatever it was about to unfold. The air outside the warehouse was thick with tension, dust swirling in the sunlight as Mason and Rex emerged onto the perimeter road. The black SUV they had been tracking was nowhere in sight, but the faint skid marks on the asphalt and the scattered debris hinted at a hasty departure. Mason's heart hammered. Every second counted. The orchestrator had already tested them once, and they weren't likely finished. Rex sniffed the air, ears pricked forward, tail rigid. He barked sharply and bolted down a narrow access road, dragging Mason after him. The officer's boots pounded against the asphalt as adrenaline surged, muscles screaming in protest. Mason's radio buzzed incessantly with dispatch updates, road closures, and backup coordination, but he ignored it. Every second he waited was a second closer to danger. Ahead, the SUV appeared around a corner, tires screeching, honking at a delivery van that had the misfortune of crossing its path. Mason cursed under his breath and activated his patrol car's siren, leaping into the vehicle and slamming the accelerator to the asphalt. Rex leapt into the passenger seat, teeth bared, eyes locked on the moving target. The chase barreled through the airport service roads, weaving dangerously between parked cargo trucks and maintenance vehicles. Mason's pulse throbbed in his temples as the SUV weaved around corners, attempting to shake him off. But Mason wasn't giving up. He couldn't. Somewhere inside that vehicle, the orchestrator had left clues, threats, and a test of their speed and judgment. "Control, Unit 7, Mason shouted into his radio. "SUV confirmed in pursuit path. Suspects potentially armed. Request spike strip deployment at perimeter road exit. Repeat urgent." Dispatch responded immediately. "Copy, Unit 7. Spike strips en route. Maintain pursuit until containment." The SUV suddenly veered into a side lane leading to the airport's short-term parking lot, tires screeching against concrete. Mason's car skidded in pursuit, narrowly avoiding a taxi that had stopped in the path. Rex barked ferociously, claws scraping the floorboard, eyes locked on the black vehicle as if predicting every maneuver. As the SUV passed a row of parked cars, Mason noticed a small, pink sticker affixed to the rear bumper. His stomach tightened. A pacifier-shaped sticker. The orchestrator wasn't just leaving cryptic threats, they were playing a game, inserting symbols meant to send a message. It was psychological manipulation, a taunt, a warning. We know what matters to you and we can threaten it at any moment. The SUV accelerated sharply, cutting into a narrow service lane that led toward the outer perimeter roads. Mason followed closely, heart racing. Rex's ears twitched, alert to sounds Mason couldn't yet perceive. Suddenly, the SUV braked hard and veered into an abandoned lot behind a maintenance warehouse. Mason slammed on his brakes, skidding to a halt inches from a chain-link fence. He jumped out, weapon drawn, Rex at his side, snarling. The SUV's doors were now open, but empty. Whoever had been inside had vanished. Mason's chest tightened. The orchestrator was clever. They were never meant to be caught here. Every trace left behind, the pacifier sticker, the skid marks, the abandoned SUV, was intentional. A trail of breadcrumbs designed to test reactions, to lure him into a false sense of control. Rex growled low, ears forward, tail stiff. Mason scanned the perimeter. Then he noticed a small bundle near the edge of the lot, a piece of pink fabric snagged on a metal fence. His stomach sank. The baby, or another decoy. Mason crouched low and approached carefully. The fabric was indeed the baby's, but she wasn't alone. The stroller, carefully camouflaged with blankets, sat nearby. Mason's pulse thundered in his chest. Whoever had orchestrated this had been meticulous in hiding her from casual observation, testing Mason's attention to detail. He lifted the stroller cautiously. Inside, the baby stirred but was unharmed. Mason breathed a brief sigh of relief, holding her close. "It's okay, little one. You're safe for now," he whispered, stroking her hair. Rex barked sharply, alerting Mason to movement at the far edge of the lot. Mason froze. A shadow slipped between crates, moving toward a row of maintenance buildings. Whoever had orchestrated this wasn't finished. They were watching and possibly preparing another move. Mason radioed dispatch urgently. "Unit 7, baby located, safe. Suspect still in vicinity, moving between storage areas. Request tactical unit immediate intercept." The shadow paused as if aware of Mason's presence. Then it disappeared behind a corner. Mason signaled to the officers approaching the lot. "Spread out, cover all exits. Move carefully. They're watching and they know we're here." The baby cooed softly in Mason's arms, sensing the tension. He whispered words of comfort, trying to mask his own fear. Rex circled the perimeter, alert, teeth bared, sensing danger that Mason couldn't yet pinpoint. Suddenly, a loud metallic clang echoed from behind a stack of crates. Mason flinched, training his flashlight and weapon on the sound. The crates shifted slightly as if something, or someone, had moved between them. The orchestrator was still here, testing, manipulating, observing. Rex barked furiously and Mason lunged forward, scanning every shadow. The area was a maze of crates, equipment, and abandoned vehicles, a perfect cover for someone skilled at evasion. Dispatch buzzed in Mason's ear. Unit 7, spike strips deployed at perimeter exit, awaiting further instructions for containment. Mason's pulse spiked. Whoever orchestrated this knew the airport layout intimately. They had planned escape routes, decoys, and diversions, and yet Mason's resolve hardened. He would not let them get away, not today. He adjusted the baby in his arms, checking for any signs of distress. The little girl stirred but remained unharmed, a fragile beacon of innocence amid the chaos. Mason's eyes flicked to Rex, whose gaze remained fixed on the shadows. Then Mason noticed a faint trail, footprints in the dust near the crates, fresh, deliberate, leading toward a narrow alleyway between warehouses. Mason's mind raced. This was the next lead, the next step. He could feel the orchestrator's presence like a pulse in the air, guiding the trail, controlling the pace of the hunt. He motioned for the officers to follow. "Move with me, stay sharp, they're close, I can feel it." Rex barked again, leading the way, muscles taut, senses alert. Mason followed, baby cradled carefully, flashlight cutting through the shadows. Every corner held potential danger. Every step could trigger a trap. The alley narrowed, sunlight fading as the buildings on either side stretched upward like walls. Mason's breath came in sharp bursts. He could feel the orchestrator watching, testing, taunting. Whoever they were clever, patient, and cruelly precise. As Mason rounded a corner, the alley opened to a small courtyard behind a maintenance shed. And there it was, a figure, barely visible, slipping behind a stack of crates. Mason froze, heart hammering. The orchestrator had led him to this point intentionally. And now the next move, whatever it would be, was about to unfold. Rex growled low, teeth bared, ears pricked forward. Mason's finger tightened on the trigger. And in that tense, silent moment, Mason realized the orchestrator had anticipated every move. But he wasn't backing down. Not now. Not ever. The courtyard was eerily quiet, the midday sun casting long shadows across the cracked asphalt and stacked crates. Mason crouched low, the baby cradled carefully against his chest. Rex growled, low and threatening, scanning every inch of the alley with an intensity that made Mason's blood run cold and sharp at the same time. Every muscle in the dog's body was taut, ears pricked, tail rigid, a silent warning that danger was closer than it seemed. Mason's eyes flicked across the crates, searching for movement, for any sign of the orchestrator. The faint metallic clang he had heard moments ago had ceased, leaving a heavy, suspenseful silence that pressed against his chest. The baby's soft whimpers reminded him that despite the tension, there was someone utterly innocent depending on him. He radioed dispatch in a low, urgent tone. "Unit 7, courtyard behind maintenance shed 4, suspect possibly hiding near crates, proceed with caution, tactical units advised." "Copy, Unit 7, came the response, calm but firm. "Additional units are 5 minutes out. Maintain position and contain suspect if possible." Mason swallowed hard. 5 minutes could feel like a lifetime in a situation like this. Whoever had orchestrated the earlier abduction had been precise, deliberate, and terrifyingly clever. They might have booby-trapped this area, or worse. Rex suddenly barked sharply, a single, piercing sound that reverberated across the courtyard. Mason's head snapped in the direction of the sound. Between two crates, a shadow flickered, a figure crouched low, moving with calculated stealth. Mason's pulse surged. "Rex, stay close," he whispered, raising his flashlight and weapon simultaneously. The dog pressed against his leg, growling deep and menacingly. The figure froze. Mason's flashlight illuminated a glint of metal, a door latch perhaps, or a small weapon. He inched forward, careful, calculating each step. His boots scraped lightly against the concrete, but it was enough for the figure to move again. Then suddenly, the shadow darted to the far corner of the courtyard, attempting to slip between crates toward an exit. Mason lunged, calling out, "Stop! Police! Freeze!" Rex bolted forward, teeth bared, pursuing the shadow with precision. The orchestrator didn't expect the dog to react this quickly, to anticipate the exact path they would take. Mason sprinted after them, baby held securely, adrenaline surging through every vein. The figure stumbled over a loose crate, a muffled grunt escaping their lips. Rex pounced, pinning the orchestrator against the ground with unyielding force. Mason skidded to a halt, heart pounding, and moved quickly to secure the person. He crouched over the suspect, weapon raised. "Don't move, hands where I can see them." The figure was masked, dressed in black from head to toe, their movements tense and deliberate. Mason's flashlight revealed trembling hands. The orchestrator's eyes, visible through the mask, darted nervously, calculating, desperate. Rex barked low, growling, maintaining pressure. Mason could feel the orchestrator's panic, their fear palpable, but he remained calm, focused. He secured the individual with zip ties provided by backup officers who had finally arrived moments later. Mason exhaled slowly. The orchestrator's mask slipped slightly, revealing a sharp, calculating face. Mason's stomach turned. This wasn't just a random criminal. They were trained, methodical, experienced in manipulation, in terror. He glanced down at the baby, safe in his arms, and felt a rush of relief, but it was fleeting. The orchestrator's calm, calculating gaze suggested this was far from over. Mason's radio buzzed again. Unit 7, additional suspect located near perimeter fence, tactical teams on site. Mason nodded, eyes narrowing. Whoever had orchestrated this had contingency plans, multiple actors, and a far-reaching scheme. He needed answers, and he needed them fast. He turned to Rex, who was now standing protectively over the baby. The dog's ears twitched, scanning the courtyard, alert to every sound. Mason felt a deep, unspoken connection with his partner, a bond that had saved lives before and would continue to do so. Then a faint whimper came from the baby monitor. Mason glanced down. The baby shifted slightly, reaching out instinctively. Mason whispered softly, soothing her, though his mind remained razor-sharp, alert to every possibility. The orchestrator sat on the ground, breathing heavily, hands cuffed, eyes darting toward the warehouse shadows. Mason approached cautiously, kneeling down. "Who are you working with? Why the baby?" he demanded, voice steady but edged with urgency. The orchestrator smirked, shaking their head. "You think capturing me ends this," they said, voice low and mocking. "You've only uncovered the first layer. The real game, the real plan hasn't even begun." Mason's jaw tightened. He felt a surge of determination. Whoever this was, whatever their plan, he would stop them. He couldn't allow fear, manipulation, and danger to dictate the lives of innocent people. Not here. Not now. Rex barked again, as if agreeing with Mason, scanning the shadows for additional threats. The dog's instincts had guided them to the baby, had protected lives, and now Mason knew that no matter the complexity of the orchestrator's scheme, they were prepared to face it head-on. Backup officers moved quickly to secure the area. Mason handed the baby to the mother, who clutched her child tightly, tears streaming down her face. "You saved her," she whispered, voice trembling. Mason nodded, keeping one eye on the restrained orchestrator and another on the shadows. "She's safe," he said, voice firm. "For now." But deep down, Mason knew that the orchestrator's warning was true. This had been only a part of a larger, more dangerous plan. And now, with one suspect in custody, the question remained. Who else was involved, and what would their next move be? Rex barked again, low and insistent, alert to distant sounds Mason could barely perceive. The dog's instincts, as always, were a step ahead. Mason knew that the danger was not over, not by a long shot. He glanced back at the mother and child, their safety temporary but precious. The orchestrator sat restrained, eyes calculating, smirk never leaving their face. Mason exhaled slowly, already formulating his next move. The courtyard was quiet now, but Mason could feel it, the tension lingering in the air, the knowledge that the orchestrator's game was far from over. And as Rex growled softly, tail stiff, Mason knew one thing for certain. The next chapter of this nightmare was approaching, and it would demand every ounce of courage, skill, and instinct they had. Somewhere unseen and unrelenting, the orchestrator was already plotting the next strike. The restrained orchestrator sat on the cold concrete, breathing heavily, smirk etched across their face as if daring Mason to make a misstep. But Mason knew better. There was a deeper network behind this, a web of danger carefully hidden beneath layers of deception. One suspect captured was only the beginning. Somewhere, accomplices were moving, watching, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Rex's ears twitched, his body stiff and tense. He sniffed the air, tail lashing, alert to something Mason couldn't yet detect. The dog's instincts were sharper than any technology, more precise than any radar. Mason followed Rex's gaze, scanning the perimeter of the warehouse lot. Shadows shifted at the far end, near a cluster of shipping containers. Backup officers had begun processing the area, taking statements from the mother and ensuring the baby's safety. The infant cooed softly, cradled in her mother's arms, oblivious to the danger that had just stalked her moments ago. Mason allowed himself a brief glance at the child. Every fiber of his being reminded him that lives hung in balance, not just the baby, but countless others who could be targeted next. Rex barked sharply, a single commanding bark that echoed through the lot. Mason tensed, knowing it was no ordinary warning. There was movement, rapid, deliberate, behind the containers. Mason raised his flashlight and weapon, heart hammering. "Cover the exits," he ordered the officers. "Stay sharp, they're not alone." From the shadows, two figures emerged, masked, dressed in black tactical gear, moving with the precision of trained operatives. Mason's stomach tightened. This wasn't random. The orchestrator had backup, a hidden team strategically positioned to manipulate, escape, and test responses. "Stop right there," Mason shouted. "Hands where I can see them." The figures froze, eyes darting, scanning the lot. One of them reached subtly toward a crate, a potential weapon, Mason realized instantly. He fired a warning shot into the air. The sound echoed, bouncing off the warehouses, startling birds into flight. Rex lunged, teeth bared, tackling the closer figure to the ground. The second operative bolted, slipping behind another container. Mason sprinted after them, baby monitor tucked into his pocket, ears tuned to the faintest sounds. Every step carried danger, every corner, a potential trap. Backup officers engaged the first operative, restraining them with tactical precision. Mason rounded the corner just in time to see the second operative reach for a device, a small electronic box blinking ominously. Mason fired another warning shot, hitting the ground nearby. The operative froze, startled, but the box began to beep faster. Mason dove, grabbing the operative's arm and throwing him to the ground. Rex jumped in, teeth snapping, growling fiercely. Mason ripped the device free. It was a timed explosive. His heart raced as he quickly assessed it, a crude but effective setup designed to kill, to intimidate, to manipulate. "Rex, back," Mason ordered, carefully moving the baby monitor further away from the device. Backup officers moved in, securing the second operative. Mason's hands shook slightly as he defused the device, adrenaline coursing through his veins. The orchestrator's plan had almost succeeded. He glanced back at the first suspect, restrained, still smirking despite the capture of their accomplices. Mason's jaw tightened. "This isn't over," he muttered under his breath. The orchestrator's network was extensive, coordinated, and dangerous. The mother clutched her child, terrified but safe, tears streaming down her face. Mason approached cautiously. "Your baby is safe," he reassured her. "For now." But Mason knew better. The orchestrator had planned for every scenario, calculated every outcome. Capturing two operatives and restraining the mastermind was only the first layer. The deeper plan, the real danger, remained hidden. Rex whined softly, nudging Mason's leg, alert to movements beyond human perception. Mason followed the dog's gaze. A subtle shift in the shadows, a door ajar, a flicker of movement hinted at another presence. Someone else was still out there, observing, waiting, calculating. Mason activated his radio, issuing tactical commands. "Perimeter sweep. Every exit covered. No one leaves without clearance. Be aware this is coordinated. We're likely dealing with multiple operatives. Stay alert." The sun had begun its slow descent, casting long shadows across the lot. The light highlighted a faint trail, a series of footprints in the dust leading away from the warehouse. Mason knelt to examine them. Fresh, intentional, deliberate. They didn't belong to the restrained suspects. This was another layer, another lead, a breadcrumb left to lure them into the orchestrator's next move. Mason's gut tightened. Whoever had orchestrated this had anticipated Mason's responses, the presence of backup, and the intervention of Rex. This trail was deliberate, designed to lead him somewhere dangerous, some place where the orchestrator could continue their game. He rose slowly, baby monitor secure, eyes scanning the perimeter. Rex barked sharply, tail stiff, ears forward. Mason's pulse surged. Time was critical. The orchestrator was out there, watching, planning, manipulating. He radioed dispatch. "Unit 7, footprints leading north from the warehouse lot. Suspects may have additional devices or accomplices. Request full tactical support and aerial surveillance. Move quickly, this is high risk." Dispatch responded immediately, the urgency clear in their voice. "Copy, Unit 7, full support en route. Maintain position and track. Avoid engagement without backup." Mason nodded, his mind working rapidly. He had to anticipate the next move, follow the trail, protect the innocent, and prevent the orchestrator from executing their next layer of the plan. Every second mattered. Rex growled again, leading Mason toward the trail. Mason followed, flashlight cutting through the growing shadows. The lot was silent, almost too quiet, the tension thick in the air. Every crate, every shadow seemed to conceal a potential threat. Mason's hand tightened around his weapon. The orchestrator's game was far from over. He could feel it in his bones, in Rex's low growl, in the way the shadows seemed to shift with purpose. The network was still active, the next move already in motion, and the orchestrator was watching, learning, manipulating. He glanced at the baby monitor, hearing the faint coo of the child. She was safe for now, but Mason knew that now could vanish in an instant. Every instinct screamed that the orchestrator's plan was far more extensive than anyone had realized. As the trail led them toward the perimeter fence, Mason's heart pounded with anticipation. Every step was calculated, precise. Rex was tense, muscles coiled like springs, ready to react to the slightest threat. The orchestrator's hidden network had revealed its presence, and Mason understood, with a chilling certainty, that the most dangerous chapter of this nightmare was only beginning. And somewhere beyond the shadows, the orchestrator's next move was already unfolding. The trail led Mason and Rex to the perimeter of the airport, where the concrete ended and a narrow service road cut through a forested embankment. Shadows stretched long in the fading light, and the air was heavy with tension, carrying the faint scent of gasoline and dust. Mason's pulse thudded in his chest, his senses sharp, every muscle coiled for action. The baby monitor nestled safely in his pocket amid soft coos, fragile, innocent, but a stark reminder of what was at stake. Rex stopped suddenly, ears forward, growling low. Mason crouched, weapon ready, eyes scanning the tree line. Something moved, a flicker of black against the fading sun. Mason signaled backup officers to hold position and advance slowly, tactically. Then out of the shadows the orchestrator appeared. Their mask was gone, revealing a face pale and composed, almost eerily calm despite the chaos around them. Two accomplices emerged behind, carrying tactical gear and small, menacing devices. Mason's stomach tightened. This was the full network, the endgame he had been anticipating. "Drop everything," Mason commanded, voice steady but edged with intensity. "Now." The orchestrator smirked, hands raised slowly. "You've done well to get this far," they said, voice calm, almost taunting. "But do you think this ends here?" Rex growled and lunged forward instinctively. Mason held him back with a firm hand, eyes locked on the orchestrator. Every movement, every blink, every shadow seemed calculated, a chess game of life and death. Suddenly, one accomplice reached toward a crate, triggering a small device that emitted a high-pitched shriek. Mason winced, covering his ears. Rex barked furiously, leaping toward the device and knocking it away, teeth snapping. The orchestrator's smirk faltered slightly, but only slightly. Mason's eyes flicked to the second accomplice, who was attempting to slip behind a tree for cover. He fired a warning shot into the air, shattering the silence. "Hands where I can see them. Step into the light." The accomplice hesitated, then complied, hands raised. Mason's mind raced. The orchestrator had planned for every scenario: diversions, decoys, explosives, traps. But now Mason was finally in position to end the nightmare. Backup officers advanced carefully, weapons trained, containing all exits. Mason's heart pounded, not with fear, but with urgency, the adrenaline of knowing that each second counted for everyone involved. Rex barked sharply, eyes fixed on the orchestrator. Mason slowly approached, weapon steady, taking in every detail. The orchestrator's eyes flicked toward him, cold, calculating. But there was a glimmer of tension now, a hint that their meticulous plan was finally unraveling. Mason stopped a safe distance away. "It's over," he said, voice firm, unwavering. "You've endangered innocent lives long enough. Step away from your devices. Surrender." For a tense heartbeat, the orchestrator didn't move. Then, slowly, deliberately, they raised their hands, signaling compliance. But the smirk remained, a reminder that control and manipulation had been their game. Rex's growl lowered to a watchful rumble. Mason signaled to the tactical team, who moved in to restrain the orchestrator and their accomplices. The devices scattered across the ground were carefully secured by bomb disposal units. The threat, dangerous as it had been, was finally neutralized. Mason exhaled slowly, finally allowing himself to glance at the baby monitor in his pocket. The faint coos brought a surge of relief. The mother, standing nearby, clutched her child tightly, tears streaming down her cheeks, shaking with emotion. She whispered soft prayers, her hands trembling around the baby's small body. "You saved her," she murmured, voice cracking. "You saved my baby." Mason nodded, emotions he had kept in check rising briefly. He crouched slightly, gently nodding to the mother. "She's safe. That's what matters." Rex pressed against Mason's leg, tail wagging slightly, still alert, still cautious. Mason scratched behind his ears, murmuring, "Good work, boy. You kept us alive and you kept her safe." Officers began documenting the scene, taking statements and securing evidence. Mason walked slowly through the perimeter, eyes scanning for anything that might have been overlooked. Every detail mattered, every clue could have saved or doomed a life. The orchestrator, now restrained and seated in a tactical vehicle, met Mason's gaze. There was no fear, only a lingering sense of pride in the chaos they had orchestrated, a stark reminder of human cunning and cruelty. Mason's jaw tightened. Justice would be served, but the memory of this meticulously calculated threat would linger. Mason glanced at Rex, then at the mother and her baby. The child cooed, stretching tiny arms toward her mother. Mason allowed himself a moment of quiet relief, knowing that in the middle of orchestrated terror, courage, Instinct and quick thinking had triumphed. The sun was setting, painting the airport lot in deep shades of orange and gold. Mason exhaled slowly, feeling the weight of the morning's chaos lift slightly. But the vigilance remained. There would always be threats, always be danger. Today, however, they had prevailed. The mother hugged her baby tightly, sobbing softly. Mason watched, feeling a rare moment of triumph in the darkness of the day's events. He knew the orchestrator's plan had been dangerous, brilliant, and cruel, but it had been stopped. Lives had been saved. Courage had made the difference. Rex barked softly, nudging Mason's hand. He patted the dog gently. "We did it, boy, we did it." As officers escorted the orchestrator and their accomplices into awaiting vehicles, Mason felt a mixture of exhaustion, relief, and determination. This chapter had ended, but the experience had changed him, sharpened his instincts, and reminded him of the delicate balance between innocence and danger. The mother carried her baby toward the terminal, weaving through the last beams of sunlight, while Mason remained, watching over the scene, alert to the smallest movement, prepared for the next threat that might emerge. And as the shadows lengthened, Mason knew one truth. Courage, vigilance, and the bond between man and dog had stopped a nightmare today. But the world remained unpredictable, dangerous, and relentless. He looked down at Rex, who had his paw resting gently on Mason's boot. "We'll be ready for the next one," Mason murmured, voice soft but determined. The baby's cries faded into contented coos, the mother's embrace strong and protective. Mason allowed himself a final glance at the captured orchestrator, knowing that justice, in some measure, had been served. The airport was quiet again, but Mason's mind was alert, every sense tuned to the possibility of new threats. The day had tested courage, instinct, and resolve, and Mason, with Rex at his side, had met the challenge. And somewhere in the shadows of the city, others would plan. But today, the innocent had survived and heroes had prevailed.